Cue Dave and Ryan in 3, 2, 1.
It's Dave and Ryan's movie review.
So from time to time on Dave and Ryan's movie review, we like to do a technical segment because that's where Ryan's heart is when it comes to movies is filmmaking and lighting and all those great things. So this time around, Ryan's brought a friend of his in over the phone, and we're going to talk with him about character development and things like that. So Ryan, I'm going to kind of turn it over to you now.
All right, so this is my good friend Todd. Todd has been teaching for 16 years in film and media. He has a master's degree from AFI, that's the American Film Institute, and he was an intern for DreamWorks back in the day. So Todd, how you doing?
Great. Hey, thanks for having me on the show, Ryan.
Well, thanks for being here.
Hey.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about some script writing and character development today because I know you're a big writing guy and I can't spell or read.
Yeah, so I know Ryan's working, we're working and writing constantly on new ideas and new scripts. And so today I just want to introduce 4 simple suggestions on creating a new film character. And so to start out with, when we say a movie character, I'd like you to just think, Ryan, what are some of the names of your favorite movie characters, or Dave?
For some of my favorite movie characters? Oh, that is a tough one. Well, there's always, Luke Skywalker. That's a good one. Skywalker, the last name there. That's, memorable. What about you, Dave?
I was going to say, I was actually going to go with Han Solo.
Han Solo.
That's a great one for me.
Because you ride in Solo.
That's right. Indiana Jones. Yes, it is another Harrison Ford character. But those are just iconic characters and great names that people remember.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I wrote a few down. I'm just going to rattle them out here. John Wick, James Bond, La Femme Nikita, Ferris Bueller, Don Corleone, Morpheus, Mary Poppins, Buzz Lightyear, Hannibal Lecter, Black Widow, Katniss Everdeen, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, E.T., and Waiting for Guffman. So when we hear these, they're very memorable. Some other, simple characteristics about picking a good name is that it pops, right? It has a nice ebb and flow, and it's not just your regular name. One beef I have is my name is Todd, and in movies, the stereotypical villain is Todd, right? Todd always gets killed. Todd always gets made fun of.
Art reflects life, Todd.
For whatever reason, Todd has been stereotypical, go after that kind of a name. But you can make something interesting like Todd something, add something onto that to make it interesting. So you make something like Todd Tucker Must Die, and all of a sudden this banal name becomes a little bit more interesting. So when you name your characters, think of something that pops. It has a nice ebb and flow, and it's very memorable. And that's a good place to start because once you know the name of your character, you're able to write towards that character, right? And in some examples, you write directly to the character. Buffy the Vampire Slayer is just that. But Happy Gilmore, is anything but happy. And this, because of his name, that creates a more dynamic character.
Yeah.
I get that. That makes sense. I never thought about it that way, but it does make sense.
Yeah, I'm excited for Happy Gilmore, too, because, we know what the character is, and we're going to see this character, in new situations. And so I guess it's very memorable once you know the name and you know exactly how they're going to act.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my next suggestion is you have to be the expert on your movie character, right? And you have to know everything about them. Not just, what they look like, but their psychology, what their fears are, what they're addicted to. You have to know this whole backstory. And the reason why is, you're not going to use every single detail as you write your script, but you really need to know how they're going to act in any scene or scenario and how they would behave. For example, so Dave, you know Ryan really well.
Sadly, yes.
Too well. If Ryan all of a sudden came across a nudist colony how would he react? Like, what would he say? What would he do?
Well, probably the first thing he would do, knowing Ryan like I do, is he would join them. And then at some point in the day, I'm thinking that Ryan is getting arrested.
Okay. All right.
what?
This is a little bit revealing, incriminating. But Ryan, see, you're so much more interesting now as a character. I bet you're going to start getting a lot of emails and calls. Local nudist colony here. But you can see how you know each other so well. You know exactly how they're going to interact. Like my dad or my mom, if something happened to them, I know exactly what they would say, exactly what they would do. And you, as a goal, you want to try and get to that point where you can do that for the characters you have created.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you a question, Todd. With that whole thing being said, when you create a character, do you base it off like maybe someone you know and kind of how they would react, like the example you just gave with me, or is it just completely off the top of your head?
Great. That's a great question. So I love, you can only write what you know. Mm-hmm. And so you really have to draw upon life experience. And so for writers, this is great because you're writing all the time. You just go out there in public right now, and the world is so crazy and messed up. You're going to get into conflicts. You're going to see crazy things every day, right? So you step outside, and all of a sudden a nudist colony runs by, and you see your friend Ryan for the first time.
All in the flesh.
Like, really see him.
Yeah. You write this down in a journal, and you're like, hey, this weird, experience happened to me today. I don't know exactly how I'm going to use it, but I've kind of collected these experiences and these really interesting characters. And, that's a real-life experience, and so I can draw upon that later as I develop my characters.
So, Todd,
to answer your question, I think it's good to, write what you know, draw upon your own experiences, and collect as much real-life experience from real-life characters. Because, if it's interesting to you, it'll be interesting to an audience.
So, Todd, just kind of backtracking a little bit to what you said, do you do a lot of people watching? Do you do a lot of journaling and things like that? Or do you try and just kind of base off what you already know?
I love bookstores because I write as much as I can for what I know. And then what I don't know, I'll go to the library or do research on how, for medical terminology, investigations, murder mysteries. Another thing is dialogue. For example, I'm from the 80s and 90s, so I, dude, bro, whatever. But then you come to...
I have never heard you say bro.
Cool. Well, that's to my friends.
I'll just see myself out.
Yeah, but right now, see, it's Ryan. If it was my high school kid, I'd be like, "Oh, dude, Ryan, you're like the Riz, or like you're
this is the high school kid. You bought him a vehicle that he will get pulled over all the time.
Yeah.
Todd bought his son an illegal truck.
Oh, well.
It's illegal. Yeah. So I do people watch. I mean, you just sit in the mall and you just listen to how people talk. And if they say something memorable, you just kind of take notes again and you write that down. You're like, you can tweak it a little bit. But you're looking for memorable dialogue that really impacts you somehow, right? It makes you angry. It makes you emotional. It makes you sad. I remember those words that people say, and I'm like, wow, that'd be a great line, for one of my characters that fits their persona, and it would be good. So, yeah, I do a lot of journal writing. I have a sketchbook in every room, and I just write down things as I hear them or experience them. And, again, I don't think you're going to put it to the right script at the beginning, but eventually, as you develop a lot more material, you'll find a really good use for it. But if you don't document it, then you probably lose it. It's the thought will just come, and if you don't entertain it at that moment, you'll lose it. So
right. So you're creating this character bank, so to speak.
That's a great way to describe it. Yeah, you're just collecting all of these thoughts, and it really helps your writing later. When you have the so-called writer's block, you just go back to your bank and just start to look through.
Yeah, one of my favorite things to do when I go to Vegas is to go down to Fremont Street and just, as you said, Dave, people watch and just come up with backstories for people you see, because there's a lot of interesting characters down there.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. The last time I was there, a naked lady in a wheelchair, about 70 years old, came up and took a picture with me, and I was like, you can't write that kind of stuff, right? Those are like real characters, real people, and it makes life beautiful when you get to meet and run into these people. Even people,
Interesting
I'd
choice
say
of
that
words
you
there.
don't get along with. For me, it makes life more manageable, right? So you come across like a Karen or somebody that's yelling at you, or you're getting in a situation while you're waiting in line, and you just listen to how they talk. Look at what makes them. What is their behavior? Why are they angry at you? Why are you angry at them? And it's kind of cathartic because you need to go home and be like, oh man, your name is going into my script, and I'm writing the same, scenario. Because you're banking these emotions and these feelings, and then you can express them again through your writing. And so it's really a fun thing to do when you meet that person that just kind of gets under your skin.
Well, I squirreled there for a minute because I'm all of a sudden now I'm trying to think of a backstory of a naked 70-year-old lady in a wheelchair.
There she was from the 70s. She used to love riding her scooter, and now she scoots up to old men.
That's right. Something.
They called her Debbie.
Debbie.
Whatever works.
Yeah.
Whatever works.
And when you see somebody that's really interesting, I think what we gravitate towards is all of the perfect qualities, right? Are they extremely ugly? Are they extremely beautiful? And we first, I guess, judge and scan people for everything we love about them. But for developing characters, my suggestion is to not start with that route. When I think of I'm creating this character for myself, I love my character too much. And what I mean by that is that I neglect why this character is bad. What is their fatal flaw?
Yeah, you become too attached to a character, and that's why you always have other people read it, and let them know kind of the direction you want to go. And they might say something you don't want to hear, and you got to take that with a grain of salt. But basically, that's how you develop the character more.
Great, yeah, that's a great sign that you love your character too much. As you get feedback, like, I like this. They should be doing this instead of that. That's a great note because I call it you got to step on your puppies, and that's a morbid thought. But as a writer, you have to be the most cruel person to your own character, which means you have to target and expose all of those fatal flaws.
Yeah.
So instead of saying, "Oh wow, my character is awesome because they're sexy, they're beautiful, they're rich, and they have all these weapons,"
They have no flaws.
But cool. you
Makes
flip
them
that
boring.
script and you say, "Okay, this is why I hate this person. This guy is old. He's over the hill. He's divorced. Still lives with his mother. He's unemployed. Picks his nose. He's addicted to Dr. Pepper. Why do I hate this person?"
Dr. Pepper.
This isn't an autobiography, by the way. This is just purely coincidence.
I wasn't going to say anything, Todd, but
I knew you were going to say something. I know you're thinking it, Ryan. But
thinking and saying are two different things.
Thank goodness for that.
those weaknesses are what really make the character more rounded and dynamic. The reason why is because when we introduce a character by everything we hate about them or their flaws, is it creates a vulnerable human nature, which makes them more believable. And most importantly, for an audience, it creates empathy. Like we actually care about this character because we have some kind of personal connection to that character. And the example I like to use is, and this is an iconic example, but Superman, right? Superman is the fastest. He's faster than a speeding bullet. He can jump higher buildings in a single bound. But if he touches a green rock, then he dies. So, I don't care how perfect and strong he is. All of a sudden, he's human to me and vulnerable to me because he can't go near kryptonite, right?
Yes, his one weakness is
that's
green
what makes
glow
the character
sticks.
interesting. Another example, I like to use is James Bond. And when we, a superficial pass, when we say describe James Bond, is that he is sexy, he's well-dressed, he's a secret man of mystery, he's a freaking spy for Her Majesty, the Queen of England, right? He gets to drive Aston Martins. He sleeps with beautiful women. He knows martial arts. This guy gets to travel the world and use high-tech gadgets and weapons. And that's like exotic to me, right? That's like, oh, I want that life.
Yeah.
And so that's a little bit interesting, but that's not what makes Bond interesting. You go through his movies, and he's actually one of the saddest characters to exist because he's a barely functioning alcoholic, right? He's always drinking. It's not the martini shaken, not stirred. It's that he's always drinking a martini, right? He's emotionally unstable.
What if that's one of the things that we find appealing?
Yeah,
Always drinking.
Why are you pointing at me?
I'm not. I'm making a point.
Hey, Todd, we're going to have to take a break right now, but when we come back, we're going to be speaking more with Todd. All right, and welcome back. We are here with my good buddy Todd, and we're going to pick up right where we left off, talking about character development. Okay. Todd, in the last segment, we ended with the James Bond. We were talking about how he's a sad alcoholic. And Dave was pointing at me.
His laundry list is huge because we were saying, he's emotionally unstable, and so many people can relate to that, right, Ryan? He's impulsive.
Hey, we're not pointing fingers, Todd, or else I'm pointing back.
He's impulsive, he's arrogant and prideful. This guy is alone, right? He's a loner. Not being incriminating here. He's constantly learning how to survive in the world, right? And the last thing is, who would want to be a guy that, you have so many enemies that hate you, want to kill you, that you really can't go anywhere in public, right? You have to live the secret life the rest of your life. So when you think about that, you're like, it's exotic, but then, what makes it kind of interesting is he's got to live with this other, this big trailer of baggage in his life that makes him a more realistic character. And that's why I think the Bond character has been able to, transfer from different actors and over the, decades of movie history, there's always a Bond film coming out.
Let me ask you, with that being said, now, when you develop a character, you usually have someone in mind or kind of someone in mind who you think would want to play them. And with James Bond, the switch is actor to actor. So when you're writing a character, are you keeping that in mind, or are you more just kind of generalizing or specific, like for a specific person or something like that?
It's a give and take. It's hard because sometimes when I'm writing a comedy script, I'm like, oh, I want this comedian to play that. But then you're thinking exactly how they would talk and so you can kind of mess up, introduce too much to your own story if you have a character in mind. And studios may not want that because what if they can't secure that talent, right? What if they can't get Tom Cruise? Then you can't. You have to put somebody else in that role, and if it's written for that specific actress or actor, then that might be very complicated. So, if you're hired to write the script specifically for an actor or actress, then yes. But if not, you really have to keep the door open so that, you can translate to different characters. The Bond character could easily be a female character, right? You could have Atomic Blonde kind of a
Dave shaking his head
kind of
no.
a character take over the Bond series, and that would drive a lot of people crazy. But then it's such a great character that it could translate across different universes at the same time. And if you pigeonhole yourself by saying I can only do this with this person, then that might be limiting and tying your hands behind your back. That being said, there are some movies like, when you say John Wick, it has to be Keanu, right?
Yeah.
You can't just say, oh, it's going to be this other person because it's just not going to work, with that other person. So,
yeah, and with this, I do remember of a time where me and you were working on a script, and you wanted Mike Myers, and I thought Craig Ferguson would be better for this one character role. Do you remember that? With the school grounds keeper for the soccer one you were writing.
Yeah, so we just had a sumo wrestling match and I beat you. And
No, you did not.
Myers is going to be in that.
I was right, and you know it.
No, a lot of writers, you think you want to write for the Hollywood A-list actors and actresses, but I would suggest start with the characters that you meet every day that you just love because they're so unique. They have quirks. And more importantly, they have like these weird weaknesses and addictions and things that are just really interesting about those people. And that material is more easily adapted into a screenplay than saying I can only use this A-list actor or actress. But I think that's a great way to write, but through influences, right, of people and actors that you think could possibly be in your screenplay.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
So, the last thing, the suggestion I have when you're writing for your characters is you have to be able to create as much conflict as possible. A story where they just completely succeed is, there's no conflict, there's no story, right?
Boring.
So a good way to do this is by using a simple sentence, and it's this. It's character A wants X, but something gets in the way. So let's try an example. Brian, I'm writing a short film with you. And let's say Dave wants lunch, right? So Dave, you're hungry. It's 2:00. You've been working all morning, and you're hungry. So your goal is to just get lunch. Now that's a simple event. So it's every day everybody gets lunch. So it's not so interesting. So what's going to make our character Dave is a very interesting character, but we want to add conflict and make Dave show more of what he's all about. So. Ryan, what are some restaurants that Dave likes?
Burger King.
Burger King? Okay. So let's say that Dave wants lunch, but he can only go to Burger King, right? So it's like Burger King Supersize Me. He's going to eat at Burger King every day for a month or a year.
Have it your way, Dave.
So instantly, often there's a little bit of a story here, right? So in price, there's all these restaurants, but all of a sudden you can only eat at Burger King. Right, so we have a little bit of conflict, but still, that's not. We want to develop that a little bit more. So let's add, hey, Dave wants to eat at Burger King, but the restaurant in Price is closed. So the nearest Burger King is in Spanish Fork, and you have to drive through Spanish Fork Canyon to get there.
I don't think your lunch break's that long.
No.
I'm trying to
could
put
be.
these roadblocks and this conflict into a simple thing, going to lunch, but now you have to geographically drive through Spanish Fork Canyon. So now think of all the conflicts that can happen when somebody just tries to drive through Spanish Fork Canyon, right? What if it's snowing, right? What if Dave hits a deer and runs off the road, right? What if he runs into a nudist colony with his friend Ryan, and all of a sudden he has to become a member and move to Bangkok. So you can just take it, the sky's the limit on where you can take your story once you know what the goal is of what your character wants, and creating conflict by saying, hey, I know you want to go to Burger King, but I'm going to do everything I can to create a roadblock and stop you from achieving that goal.
I'm going to flatten your tire.
That could be another one.
Yeah. Flatten the tire, cut the brake lines, do whatever you can to stop that, and that's adding conflict and conflict. So what happens now, for each of these conflicts, as Dave overcomes each of these conflicts, we start to see his character come out, right? So it's not exactly that Dave is Superman, but Dave is a normal human guy with extraordinary talent for overcoming all of this craziness and trying to get to the canyon.
Yeah, and just watching him getting frustrated would be comedy gold.
So the last side is, the greater the conflict, the greater the character. So you really want to create as much bad and terrible events for your character as you can, because when they overcome that, then your audience begins to root and cheer for and connect with that character because they want them to succeed. I mean, as a writer, you know your character's going to succeed, and that kind of hinders you. You want to get to that point. You don't want to be at that point. You want to get to that point where you're rooting for your characters and you want them to succeed. Now, in Hollywood endings, yes, they succeed, and not only they don't always succeed, but then you can have another powerful statement about your story, what you're trying to say in terms of your theme. But definitely, you have a connection between your character and your audience, and they'll love your characters even that much more. So I guess to summarize today, just pick a great name, know your character inside and out, and be the expert on your character. be your character's worst enemy and target those fatal flaws. And once you have all that stuff, start creating as much conflict as you can for your character, and it'll help your writing, and you'll be able to write wonderful scenes and wonderful characters.
Yeah, and this just isn't just for screenwriting. This is like
Right.
writing in general. Like if you're writing a novel or something, this would be good for character development for like a book, or even just like a play or anything like that you're working on. This this character development that we talked about today, this could be used in multiple fashions.
Definitely.
Excellent. You know what? Once again, I learned stuff today.
And the more you know,
That's right.
knowing is half the battle.
G.I. Joe. But no, I appreciate, Ryan, thank you for getting a hold of Todd here. And Todd, thanks for taking out the time to talk to us about this kind of stuff. As I said, when we do these technical segments, I always learn something. And I did learn something today. I learned that Ryan wants to be a nudist.
Deep down, don't all of us.
And God help us all.
Remember that the greatest story you'll ever tell is your own. So,
Yes.
hey, to each their own. If you want to join that colony, go ahead.
My life story is rated NC-17.
Wow.
Probably be banned in the U.S.
I think so.
It's
Don't
definitely
worry,
banned
we'll-
in China.
We'll never see it or read the script. So.
That's a good sign then.
I hate you both.
All right, take us home, Ryan.
All right, I just want to thank Todd. Todd, is there any last words of wisdom you want to grace us with before we wrap it up?
So thanks for having me, and happy writing and creating great characters. Just shout out this week to fathers, all those single dads.
Yeah.
If Bill Belichick can get remarried and Tom Cruise is still jumping out of airplanes, and 70 and 60 is the new 20. So
That's right.
wish you the best, single dad.
I need to close my mouth before I say something bad.
I think you should. Todd, thank you so much for taking out the time and putting up with Ryan and his shenanigans. I really, this was a great segment. I really appreciate you taking out the time for it.
All right, thanks, Dave. Hey, Ryan, you're in all of my scripts, by the way.
Oh, I figured.
All right, so that's going to do it for this week. Next week, all new show, and rumor has it we're going to do it live.
Yeah, live on Facebook
Oh,
and YouTube.
boy, get ready for that one. We'll post some more stuff throughout the week as we get ready, and for the build-up for that one. Should be a lot of fun. But until then, go see a movie.